A little over a year ago, I had a job working overnight at a gas station close to my house. I'm a woman and was 31 at the time. I know to some it seems unsafe for a woman to work graveyard shift by herself. However, it was a slow store and the sheriff's office was about 20 feet across from it. I really didn't think I would have that many problems. There would be about 30 customers in an 8-hour shift, and that was on a busier night in the morning. I went outside to sweep the parking lot and last minute check the trash. It was time for a cigarette, and I had one headphone in, kind of jamming out. Across the road, in the parking lot of the sheriff's office, I saw a figure with his back to me. He was swaying back and forth while looking down. Honestly, it looked like he was peeing. Against the sheriff's office, though? Yeah, the building closed at 4 p.m. and didn't open again until 6 the next morning. But why? Back of his ripped white t-shirt, I remembered that he had come in about 4 hours earlier. He was a total creep, and I could already tell he had a good buzz going. I didn't say anything. I just took my eyes off of him and tried not to draw attention to myself. It was working until a car pulled in. I was still outside as they pulled up. I saw him look at the car and then at me and back and forth again. As the customer was leaving, I walked her outside. I still had half a smoke burning, and I had left my dustpan outside with a squeegee. We both heard him start to swear and angrily and seemingly engage in an argument with himself. She looked across the road and told me to be careful. I made an awkward joke about him being the one who should be more afraid of me or something like that. Still there, but closer to the road, now facing the parking lot of my store. Whatever he's yelling was completely unintelligible. He was obviously very drunk and can barely stand straight, still swaying away. I didn't engage him, but I didn't take my eyes off of him this time. I just slowly walked back into the store. Something about his face really bothered me. It had a darkness to it, but his eyes looked wild. My experience during graveyard jobs has been that the crazy-eyed ones are the worst ones. I didn't like it at all and wanted no part of it. I still had almost 3 hours to go and 2 before any other employees got there. Instantly, I went to the computer and typed up a temporarily closed sign just in case he wanted trouble. I was coming around the counter on my way to the doors when I saw that he'd walked across the road to my side now. I literally just barely got the second door locked when he stumbled into our very small parking lot. My hand mimed the hand signal for cut across my neck, basically saying, "Nope, sorry you can't come in here, we're closed." I shook my head back and forth too, hoping to further discourage him. He started walking away but screamed something at me while he was walking. I don't mean he was grumpy and shouted at me or yelled that I was being a jerk or anything. I mean like he was at an enraged volume and was violently throwing his hands everywhere. Definitely knowing I'm in the wrong shift of the wrong job, I got really skeeved out. I decided to call the cops. It's a good thing, too, because the minute I hung up with him, there he comes again up to the door. He starts pulling and banging on it. He backs up and runs into it, trying to ram it. Not that it would have done any good. I made the mistake of telling him that I had called the cops and that he would be arrested. I say that I made the mistake of telling him because once I said that, he took off. The police never found him. They drove around the road and surrounding neighborhoods for over an hour but found no one. He was on foot, so I don't get where he could have gone to so fast. He didn't harm me, and with them not finding him, I didn't fill out a police report or anything. I was safe behind the thick glass doors that were locked for the rest of my shift. It just sucked. Maybe if I didn't warn him ahead of time, I would have had to have spent the last 3 months of my job constantly looking over my shoulder. I'll never know what the right choice was. I'm just glad I don't work there anymore. A little backstory before I tell you one of the crazy experiences of mine that happened during my 2-year security career from 2013 to 2015. I'm a 6'7" male in Australia. I'd like to think I'm a fairly tough and intimidating guy, but some of the stuff that used to go on at the mall I used to work the night shift for still gives me goosebumps to this day. So the mall I worked at was very, very large. Probably the largest in my state, I'd say. and all the way up till about 8:30 p.m., it would still be quite busy. Only around 9:30 would we manage to usher all of the scragglers out, and only at about 11 would all of the business owners have left. My job was basically to patrol the mall and make sure there were no one sticking around after the doors were closed during the night. We didn't have guns or batons, only a can of mace that was very rarely used. There were multiple occasions where we would find would-be thieves hiding around trying to break into shops after dark, but they were normally far outnumbered by the 4 or 5 of us on a shift at a time, and they would usually be intimidated by me or some of the other imposing members of security. This one night, though, things started getting really weird for me on the night shift. So I'd say it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was standing in the middle of the empty food court eating a sandwich. This was the only part of the mall that had any light at night time due to the skylight, so it was comfortable to eat there. While I was eating, though, I heard a dull scraping noise from the hallway leading off from the food courts and to some toilets. It sounded like a piece of metal dragging across the floor. I was immediately put on edge, and I flicked on my flashlight without a moment of hesitation. I can remember creeping down the hallway, flashlight in hand, illuminating a good 6 or 7 meters in front of me. As I got closer and closer to the end of the hall, the noise became louder and louder until I was at the end of the hallway and there was the toilet doors to the left and to the right of me. I could tell the sound was coming from the female toilets, though. I gripped the handle and opened the door a tiny little crack. The noise was now very clear and had me not scared but confused. I yelled, "Hey! Who's in there?" The noise quickly stopped. I paused a moment, listening hard through the tiny crack of the door, and to swear to God I could hear breathing. Low, male breathing. I shut the door, still gripping the handle tightly, and flicked on my radio. "This is 1-3. I need help in the food court bathrooms. I think someone's here." No response. This was really strange, and it put me further on edge. Policy was to always answer the radio, and now I was truly becoming quite alarmed. "This is 1-3. Does anyone copy?" Still no response. I could remember whispering to myself, "What the heck is going on?" I again opened the door a tiny crack. "Listen, mate," I said, sounding as intimidating as possible. "If you don't come out with your hands up, you're going to end up eating your teeth tonight. Do you want that?" I sat there at the door, quiet, honestly terrified at this point, but there was no response. In fact, now there was no noise at all. I yelled in the bathroom, "Okay, I'm coming in. If you do anything stupid, it's not my fault you'll never walk again." I tried my hardest to sound scary, but my voice was quivering at this point. This whole situation made no sense at all. Why would someone be in the female bathrooms at this time of night? What was the metal noise? What the heck is even happening? I very slowly opened the door and scanned my flashlight slowly across the room. All the cubicles were open, which was weird. But other than that, the room was totally empty. I was so scared. I was definitely losing it. I walked into the center of the bathroom, closing the door behind me. Scared to the core, I let out a faint. This is some horror movie type stuff. "Come out," when I heard the long, whining squeak of the door behind me. I span around, basically crying at this point, and shone my torch on a massive man, at least a head taller than me, or so it seemed in my state at the time. He was Caucasian and at least in his 40s, with matte gray hair all over his forehead. He was mid-opening the door, but he stopped dead still in the middle of his action. He just looked at me, smiling this guilty smile like a kid would make when he gets caught stealing biscuits or something like that. I'm not gonna lie, I was so scared I froze. He lifted his finger up to his mouth, before swinging the door open all the way and sprinting out with what looked like some type of small metal box in his hand. Turns out, he was just behind the door when I was opening it, and I totally missed him. I was so close to him, and I didn't even notice. He could have killed me if he had a knife or something, and that thought still haunts me to this day. Later that night, my radio miraculously started working again, and I got right on to telling my coworkers about my story. They all collectively went pale when I told them what happened. Apparently, they all had similar stories, but none that were as much of a close shave as mine. I worked a night shift for another week after that, before I quit. I'm not sticking around in a job like that. I needed help, and for some reason my radio just stopped working. Why? It was 2016, and I had just started a new job at a motel. It was low pay, but I needed an office job. One of my friends, we'll call him Michael, got me this job. For a few days, I did training with the owner in the mornings. For 2 nights, Michael trained me. Our job was the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. Nothing exciting, checking guests in and doing paperwork. My boss, the owner, went away with his wife on vacation for a week, which is attributed to the swift training I had to endure. So it was my first night alone on the night shift. There was a monitor with security cameras around the motel's property, and large glass windows all around the office building with a glass door. There was no night window like most motels have. It was fairly early in the night. At about 1 a.m., I was just doing my normal check-in paperwork, when a man walks in and asks if we have any rooms available. Usually, if someone is sketchy, my boss has me lie and say no, but he seemed normal at the moment. Without hesitation, I said, "Yes, of course, just for one?" And he replies with yes. So I begin creating the reservation on the computer when I notice he starts swatting the air and making spitting noises, as if he's being surrounded by flies. I try to ignore it. As far as I was concerned, it wasn't my business. So I try to check him into the room quickly as possible. I give him his key and he's on his way. At this point in time, I could be described as very timid. I had a lot going on in my personal life, so I hope you can all understand my reaction to what happens next. The man comes back from his room and slams his hand on the glass door and causes me to jump. Absolutely frightened, I look up to see him just staring at me. He cracks the door and puts his head through and says, "I can't get into my room. Why won't you let me into my room?" And my only defense is trying to be helpful, so I reply, "Maybe there's something wrong with your key. Let me give you another one." The look he had in his eye was inexplicable. I felt like I was in absolute danger. I handed him his new key and he went back to his room. I tried texting Michael because he is the one who trained me. Though it was the middle of the night and he was asleep, I needed some guidance. With no reply from Michael, I noticed the man trudging down the stairs to come back. I go into absolute panic mode. I run into the back office and lock the door, and I pull out my pocket knife. It's important to keep protection when you're working at night. I hear the man in the office yelling, "Hello? Hello? Why won't you let me into my room? Do you not like me?" Me being an absolute idiot and not standing my ground and calling the police when I'm feeling scared, I decided to take the situation on alone. I reply, "I'm just on the phone. I'll be right out." I then start calling Michael over and over for help. No answer. I decided to take a few deep breaths and then step out of the office. The man was not there. He was in the bathroom. I start hearing him talking to himself, angrily saying, "Kill her. Kill her." My heart sank. Still being an idiot and not calling the police, he came out and I say, "Your key was broken. I'm sorry. Let me escort you to your room." He agrees, thankfully. I was wearing a long-sleeve sweater, so with my arms down, I was able to hide my knife in my hand while holding it. I began to walk outside, and he seemed insistent to walk behind me. We began making our way to the staircase and up towards his room. I was sweating from how nervous I was, continuously looking behind me to make sure he wasn't going to make a move. He stops at a room, and I stop at his room a few doors down. I smile and say, "Oh, that's the wrong room. This is your room," as it clearly said on the door. The whole time he was going to someone else's room and trying to open the door. I felt bad for him. I quickly ran back to the office and locked the door. The next guest I checked in was a police officer from a few towns away. I felt bad for confiding in them about the guy, but they seemed willing to keep an eye and ear out. The next night, the man came back, but I had the doors locked and told him we were all booked up. I explained to my boss what happened when he got back from vacation. However, he didn't take me seriously. I continued to work there on the night shift for the next year, where many other strange encounters happened. Just remember, if you ever feel uncomfortable, always call the police.